Today's guest on The Real Truth is a man that needs no introduction. His name is U.W. Clemon. He's former federal judge, chief judge of the United States District Court here in the Northern District of Alabama, among many other things. So welcome to our program, Judge.
Thank you, my friend. Among many other things, I'm a friend of yours, which says a lot.
Well, I forgot that part. That's probably how I should have opened. You have been for a long, long time. I've been at it now 47 years. I think you've been there most of the time in a judicial capacity until you stepped down. How long did you serve on the federal bench?
I served 29 years and 7 months as a federal judge.
And what year did that start?
It started in 1980. I was one of President Carter's last appointments.
So I started in 78.
Yeah.
So we pretty much grew up together.
When I was appointed to the bench, before I was appointed to the bench, I was doing much of the same kind of work as you were doing. And so we had common experiences.
Well, did you get fussed at one time for walking down the hallway of the federal building by Judge McFadden for not having a coat and tie on? I did. I was over there to file a paper as a law clerk. He chewed me out.
Well, yeah, he was sort of, Judge McFadden was sort of fixed on the idea that lawyers should always wear a white shirt, coat, and coat and tie in his courtroom. And I did not know that feeling also affected those who come into the courthouse.
Yes, not just his courtroom, the court building.
Yeah.
So he caught me in the hallway filing back in the day when you would hand file things as opposed to electronically, going over there for Chuck Tarter, who I worked with as a law clerk. You remember him?
Yes, I do.
Quite a guy, and got me started in the criminal defense world. Then I had the fortuity of tootling under Steve Salter and Ben Daniel. Steve just finished a 6-week trial in Atlanta where out of 10 counts, he got 9 not guilties.
9 cases?
I think this may have been his swan song, but he had one client that he had a personal affection for who reached out to him and brought him into the case. He was definitely with a team of lawyers, but you know how smart he is. And he adapted and spent 6 weeks over there and came out in a very good verdict. His judge was a Judge Totenberg, who was... Is she related? Is he related to the Nina Totenberg? Yes, it's a she, and I think they're sisters. I
see.
So
this was in state court?
No, federal judge, federal court.
I see.
Some kind of wire fraud. So before being a federal judge, you spent a lot of time with a state legislative group?
Yes, I was in the state Senate for 6 years, 1.5 terms. And I was one of the first 2 Blacks elected to the Alabama State Senate since Reconstruction. It was a very interesting crew. Among others, Richard Shelby was in the crowd. There was a plantation owner, Senator Walter Gavan of Selma, was in the crowd. We had a pretty diversified group of senators back in 1974.
Well,
and George Wallace was governor.
Would it be fair to say that things have changed? Well, we now have the luxury of being able to talk about Doug Jones coming out for governor. He did announce that in my first episode, and then someone followed up on it, but I never got really credit for being the first to know, but I don't care. I don't know. I don't know.
I have breakfast with Doug and some other friends. We try to do it weekly, so I've known of his inclinations for some time, and I have encouraged him to put his hat in the ring, and I see he finally did.
He did, and he went with it. The knee-jerk reaction from anybody you talk to in the state is not a Democrat can win a statewide election in Alabama. I don't know. Historically speaking, since things changed, what year was that? When was our last Democrat? When was Folsom?
Around 2010 is when they had the complete sweep of the legislation. But, for over 100 years before then, everybody who was elected in Alabama was a Democrat.
Right. So what happened from your perspective? Did the tide just shift?
Well, the tide shifted because blacks started gaining political power in the state, and since at that time, if you wanted to be a successful politician, you had to be a Democrat. Blacks were asserting themselves in the Democratic Party and were, through Joe Reed's organization and others, gaining increasing influence in state politics. And Alabama has always been very racist. And so many of the leaders of the Democratic Party, whose parents and grandparents and great-grandparents were all yellow dog Democrats, once they sensed that blacks were gaining political power in the Democratic Party, all of a sudden they switched to the other party, the Republican Party, which they had despised for over a century.
And that really kicked into gear. It gradually grew until 2016 when things radically changed, I would say, personally, just from my own personal experience.
Yeah, well, things generally changed beginning in 2010, and it was very manifest by 2016. When I was in the legislature from 74 to 1980, there was not a single Republican in the Alabama legislature.
Either side?
Either side.
Wow.
There was not a Republican on the state Supreme Court. There may have been one or two Republican circuit judges in some of the northern counties, but basically Democrats were in full control of the political life of this state, and had been, since the 1901 Constitution.
In Doug's announcement to run, I'm sure there's been some polling done. He wouldn't be doing it unless he thought he had a chance. Mm-hmm. Irrespective of his challenge of Tommy Tuberville for governor, we all know that the state of affairs, when it comes to what I started this program about, when I got canceled by Sinclair Broadcast Group, you were probably one of the reasons I got canceled. I had you on there. But Doug was my last interview. And I got called to the principal's office. And I was told we were going in a different direction. Terms that I really don't know what that means. And I know you well enough that you would ask a lawyer that said that in front of you, what do you mean by that? But that's what I did. At any event, so we have moved totally in the opposite direction as we were, not just Alabama, but nationally. But recently we had an election that showed some movement back in the other direction. I don't know if the timing was off or what happened, but I think it gave Doug some momentum and wished the election were next week while this is going on. Yeah. But from a 50,000 foot view looking down, and I know you do a lot of litigation against the current administration, do you see the potential for that pendulum to maybe start leaning a little bit back in the other direction?
Well, yes, I do. What we have to remember is that we are living in a country and at a time when the highest elected official in the country is a criminal, a convicted criminal holds the highest office in the land. And that criminal is acting like criminals act, completely disregarding the law and acting as though the Constitution does not exist. And so we have, as ordinary citizens, a great challenge before us. Fortunately, we have history on our side. And we see what has happened in other parts of the world, indeed in this country, less so. But we see the Hitlerian experience when we had another dictator, much like Donald Trump, who put himself above the law, who gave orders to wipe out a whole race of people, the Jews, and whose generals often obeyed him. And we saw what that all came to. And in Nuremberg, we learned the lesson that just following orders can lead one to the ultimate criminal penalty of the death penalty. So we have the lesson of history on our side, and we know what our country has been, how far it has come in these this nearly quarter of a millennium, and so we have every reason to believe that if we stand up and fight for the things that we have always fought for, then there's every reason to believe that in the fullness of time, our faith in our country and in the Constitution will be vindicated.
So you're optimistic.
I am optimistic.
Well, I want to be optimistic. I started this podcast and this particular season one, I guess I'll call it one day, although it is varied. I wanted to focus on the rule of law. And I spoke in terms of the rule of law being about the three branches of government that were given to us in the Constitution as a check and a balance. And that in some of my previous interviews, I felt that the press, who embraces the First Amendment, in part, amongst others, we're becoming somewhat of a fourth branch of government. And then in discussing things with other guests that I've had, I learned that what we turn on our TVs, which I don't do as much as I used to at all. I just as soon not hear it because you don't know where the truth is. That's why I call this show The Real Truth, that they're marketing to the viewership with a message that the viewers want to hear and not necessarily a message that's based in fact.
That is so true. That is so true. And that is why it is vital that we continue to do fact checks on our own as various propositions are put before us. I continue to look at TV programs. I sometimes look at Fox News as well as the news on the regular TV channels.
As opposed to the irregular TV channel.
Yeah.
Well, I think, it's the old adage, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer.
Yes.
So you need to know what's being said. But there's some 75 million people, at least there were. I don't know where that number stands today based on polling. It would be less than that if polling's accurate in terms of approval ratings of our current administration. But it troubles me that what I thought and want to still believe is that you, as a federal judge, former federal judge, lifetime appointee, not beholden into anybody except the Constitution, are being more politicized. And I see it mostly at the Supreme Court level. Of course, you'll get a district court opinion that'll exercise some reasonableness in placing an injunction in place, and it may or may not get upheld at the next level, the circuit court level. But when it gets to the Supreme Court, they have found a way to never address the underlying constitutional issue,
Right.
but to strike what the district court judge did from a procedural standpoint and basically send it back to square one.
Exactly. And what the Supreme Court is doing now is a very frustrating experience for the district court judges, because in this shadow docket that's become so just all over the place these days.
Well, the number of cases that are appearing on it, somebody gave me that stat. It was a staggering number as compared to other times in history.
Most often the Supreme Court doesn't get to the merits and therefore give to the lower court judges some direction as to what they should do when the case comes back, other than stop what they have already done. And so this shadow docket creates great uncertainty in the law and great frustration on the part of district court judges who do the best they can to interpret the law in light of the Constitution and its meaning, only to have the Supreme Court stop what they are doing without totally explaining the reason why what they've done is insufficient.
Or giving direction to the district court judge about how to consider the facts when they do hear the evidence in the case before them.
Yes.
Now, I think, at least where I'm exposed to district court judges, which is mostly Alabama, but I've done work in other states, that they're all trying to operate under what has become known as the rule of law, which is based on precedent, of course.
Yes. Yes.
I don't think I appear before any judge around this part of the globe that doesn't do that. I haven't experienced it yet. I hope I don't. I feel like no matter who appointed the judge knows and acts and rules consistent with the Constitution and the rules, particularly in my line of work, the criminal universe, and the sentencing commission's directives and all the other things that come into play. There may be an exception or two, but I haven't seen it personally.
I agree with you that by and large, the district court judges try to follow the law as they understand it. And when they are in error, that's why the courts of appeals exist in the Supreme Court. But just at a starting level, at the trial court level, district courts generally try to follow the law because those judges realize that, we are a country of laws and not of men. And that should be the controlling principle, what the Constitution requires, what the statutes require, and not what some, quote, unitary executive determines ought to be the law of the nation.
But he's got such a following. So is he validating those people that feel the way he does? To me, he is.
Well,
and nobody checks on him. So
I think what is likely to happen is that many of the Trump supporters will grudgingly come to the recognition that what he is promised, he cannot deliver and will not deliver, and that he is a fraudster. He's a tricker, and the promises that he made, he is turning his back on. And I think what with the Epstein files and the increasing cost of living and all, those who supported him so ardently will have that support weakened as the days go by. Now, I don't think that he's going to be impeached, anything like that. But I think that in the House and Senate, as the Trump loyalists realize that the next time they run, Trump will not be on the ballot, and that they will have to answer to the votes that they have made when they face re-election.
Well, raises an interesting question. Trump says he might be on the ballot. Then what?
What?
Talk about a constitutional crisis.
Right. Trump has said many things that haven't come to be. And I think even he has realized that he's not going to be able to change the Constitution within the remaining 3 years of his time in the White House.
Well, I went back before I started, I think before I think before my interview with future Governor Jones, and reread the Bill of Rights. And I was flabbergasted how little has changed since 1776 in terms of the problems we were dealing with as a newborn country trying to break away from the chains of England and King George III.
Yeah.
I mean, they talk in terms of tariffs. They talk in terms of immigration. They just use the word hither more often than we do now. But essentially, the problems. So what I'm saying is the reason we came here, I'm talking about my grandparents, was to get the opportunity that this new country offered that they couldn't get where they were. But that's not the same today. So I don't think we'll be having, when they talk about immigration problem, because I don't think people are chomping at the bit to come over here and start their new life and live the American dream. The American dream, to me, is a nightmare right now.
It is. It is. It is. But, I'm in complete agreement with you. The more things change, the more they remain the same. They were talking about it, colonial times, the King of England. And we are talking about today the unitary executive.
I like that expression, unitary executive.
Yes. I don't see the major difference between the two.
Me either.
If the unitary executive can do whatever he wants to do, that's synonymous with being a king.
Well, what do you recommend the citizens do? I think I know the answer. Whatever your position would be to get out and vote, but just don't stay home and be apathetic and feel like your vote doesn't matter.
Yeah, not only must we get out and vote, we must communicate to our elected representatives what our position is and make them know that if they don't address the issues that we think have to be addressed, we will not forget it when we go out to the polls.
Well, one of the things Doug asked him regarding the status of affairs in D.C. between Congress and the Senate, and his observation was they don't talk not only to each other, but they don't even talk to themselves, within themselves, amongst themselves.
Yes.
And I've always wondered, when a person is in a position of authority as a senator or a congressman, are they voting their conscience, or are they voting their constituency's conscience? And I'm just not sure. I know it's not my conscience they're voting, but my party's not in there. So you think they're responsive to that? If I write a letter?
Well, yes, I think so. If enough others, sufficient number of others like you write letters, then they will take full knowledge that they may be accountable to the voters for what they have done in office. The classic example of voters of representatives forgetting about their constituencies is the one, where when election day comes, their constituencies forget about that representative and vote for someone else. I believe that the representatives should reflect the views of their constituencies and their conscience. And sometimes it comes to a point where you cannot, in good conscience, vote in a certain way which your constituents want. And when you reach that point where you are in ongoing conflict with your constituents, that's the point at which you should probably leave office. It's similar to a situation in the judiciary where, from time to time, the judge is called upon to render a decision based on the facts and the law as handed down by higher courts. Now, there were times when I was a judge, there were decisions of the 11th Circuit that I didn't agree with. They were in my case. And so, since just following orders was not a sufficient answer for my conscience, I would recuse myself from the case, refuse to sit in the case, and to issue an order which I thought, just from my own personal conscience point of view, which I thought was unjust, I simply wouldn't do it. Likewise, in the legislative sphere, when a legislator finds himself in the position where his constituents are demanding that he do something that is unjust, then it's time for that legislator to give up her job.
Well, recently, there's a quote I got from you a long time ago, but I'll save it for just a minute when I feel like it fits better. But while we're talking about legislative people getting out of office, we've recently had a very outspoken female Georgian representative come out and say, I can't do this anymore, essentially. And I'm talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yes.
Do you see that as part of what you are describing in your prior comments about a breakdown of those promises made that can't be made or can't be accomplished, and also a breakdown of the unitary, what'd you call him? Unitary executive.
Yes.
His control factor may be diminishing.
Yes, I see the Marjorie Taylor Greene example as a perfect example of what I'm talking about. When you reach the point that your conscience tells you can't do it, and the unitary executive, indeed your constituents, insist that you do it, then it's time for you to give up the job.
Well, that's admirable.
Yes, it is. But it almost never happens.
Well, that's true. In talking about the rule of law, I remember arguing a case in front of you one time and I think I was arguing against the grain. And I think you were, I can't remember the specific case, but you've given me a quote that I've used over and over again. It's usually used when I'm arguing a position that's what the law used to be, because the law is ever changing, or at least it used to be ever changing. Now I'm not sure, about some things, because we're not getting, as you said, guidance like we once got from the Supreme Court of the United States. And you looked at me and you said, Mr. Spina, let's see, I think you said it to the prosecutor who was opposing my view. And you said, Mr. Spina and Mr. Prosecutor, Plessy versus Ferguson was once the law as well. And it just made such an impression on me that I still use it to this day. I give you credit for it, because it brought about Brown versus Board of Education, which changed segregation in schools, and still remains the law. And I don't see that in danger of being challenged right now.
Well, my friend, there are some who question today. There's some as high as the Supreme Court who question the vitality of Brown versus Board. That's
frightening.
That's where the situation has become. And, many of us know that as long as life remains in us, it's not going to happen. We're not going back into slavery. And therefore, we have to fight like hell every chance we get, every day we get, to make sure that the rule of law prevails. Because if we don't fight to keep it alive, it will disappear. We can retrogress just as we've progressed over these last 2.5 centuries. We can go back if good people do nothing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope we don't end up in that predicament, but hearing what you just said gives me pause. The Constitution, I've said it before, was intended to be amended, and it would take something like that to regress to that point. I would like to think. I don't know. You scare me a little bit when you say that about as high as the Supreme Court. There are some that may feel that we need to go back where we were before 1958.
Yeah.
The law, what people don't understand is the law is ever changing. It's not black or white. And I don't mean in a racial sense. I mean in like accountants and engineers, everything is very precise.
Yeah. And yes, it is ever changing. But some of us like to say that it is ever evolving. That it's moving us to a higher plane of human existence than we've seen before.
And humanity.
But, it certainly can change and seek to turn us back at a time in history which we're ashamed of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at history, they say the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm pulling I'm pulling, and I know I don't know who listens to my show. I know I have listeners all over the world. I have people in South Africa listening to this podcast, in France and Britain. The feedback I get is what we once were, which was, and we're still a very powerful nation. There's no doubt about it. But we're not looked upon with as much respect, perhaps is the right word, as we once were. And I think European nations are stepping up to try to help us globally in some situations that maybe we have been overindulgent in participating in. I don't know. It's well above my thought processes at the moment, but I just think we need to regain the focus on who we are, who we've always been since we were formed, and get back to that reputation of being the most powerful nation.
Sure. I mean, it's something that that old saying that no man is an island.
Yeah.
That we're all part of a greater universe, and when we reach down and help those who are less fortunate than we, really we help ourselves, because as we build them up, we are strengthened. And when the poor and destitute in countries have their food supplies dwindled and terminated after many decades of United States aid, it does something to the well-being of the United States. Not to mention those who are left hungry and starving and
homeless.
Yeah. It hurts up.
It does. I want to thank you for being with me today. I appreciate you taking the time.
Tommy, thank you so much. Just let me know whenever you want me to say something.
You said plenty. And what you said is the real truth. Thank you for joining me today on The Real Truth. My name is Tommy Spina. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. I hope you will follow or subscribe to my podcast and listen in to the next episode. If you found it valuable, please take a moment to rate it and review it. It helps us to reach more listeners that care about the issues that matter. Share it with a friend. Stay engaged and remember, the truth matters. I'll see you next time.